What's up, ZBrushers? Welcome back to ZFever. My name is Ricky, and today we're going to be talking about a couple different things. I'm going to be working on this horse sculpture a little bit, and I'm going to be talking about using various techniques and using different programs to try to get things going here inside of ZBrush. Um, I'm gonna cover a couple different things, just some thoughts that I have on a few things, and maybe they're just my opinions and whatnot. But you know what, whatever. So whenever it comes to sculpture, and what we do here inside of ZBrush, um, different people are going to be coming at this program from different perspectives. Some people are working primarily in 3D for 3D's sake to be able to put an output in film or video games or whatnot, and that's going to be the largest crowd that you're going to be working with here, right? But then there are also other avenues, visual effects or special effects. People use this program to come up with things to be printed and cast in various things, and that also translates over into, say, the medical field, right? And then architectural field, and tons and tons and tons of different other avenues that may just be like little niche little markets, right? And so those are the ones that I'm going to be focusing on, primarily because that's what I do for a living, right? And yeah, I've done it all. I've worked in 3D for motion graphics and video games, but this is where I've kind of found myself, and this is kind of where I found my passion. Um, and we're going to be talking as if we were going to go poor to bronze or something like that. Okay, so what I wanted to first of all is talk about a bit of a mentality, right? When you're working inside of ZBrush, by nature, this program can be pretty challenging, especially whenever you first open it up. There's all these buttons all over the place, and you don't know what in the heck is going on. And oftentimes, I hear people get frustrated or complain about the user interface and this, that, and the other. And while I understand that, I've also been the person that's had to teach myself this program, and so I can't complain too much. I mean, yeah, I grumbled and everything like that whenever I got in here, but you get used to it. But maybe it's just because I've been working with horses, like physical horses, not sculptural horses. um, it's taught me a lot of things, not only about myself, but how to approach things in life. Um, and so that's kind of the avenue that I'm going to be talking through today, right? And how to get quality out of your work, and how to think a little bit differently whenever you're approaching things. And this might just be my 2 cents on something, but maybe hopefully I can offer some sort of advice, right? uh, so I started working with horses probably about 2 years ago. I've never before then had much to do with them. I had friends that had horses growing up, but I never really um, paid too much attention to them. I just thought, hey, these are some big animals. But the more the more I started learning about, I guess I've always been fascinated with the American West, and how things went out there, and I've always been fascinated by the culture of people who live with horses, particularly Native Americans. And so I've found myself just studying these animals and how they behave, and I learned a lot of different things about how horses behave in the wild, and it's really truly fascinating. But what I'm meandering about to get to is that whenever we're working with horses, whenever people work with horses, how do you get 1,200 pound to 2,000 pound animal to work with you, right? And there are different ways of going about that. Some people will, there's a term of breaking horses and things like that, which is not so common anymore. I'm sure it still happens out there, and people have different ways of going about training horses, right? But primarily nowadays, people have a different way called starting horses, or there are other terms. But I was always fascinated with the Native American approach, or some Native American approaches that I've heard about earning a horse's respect, and earning the right, or earning the privilege to be able to be around that horse. Because it is a thinking, breathing animal, right? And so that's kind of where I the way that I view working with sculpture is that you have to understand the program. You have to understand the things that you're working with, and a lot of people jump into these programs and expect that everything should be handed to them, or things should just work, right? The thing is that it does work. The problem usually isn't the program. The problem is usually something with the person that's using it, right? It's either something that's misunderstood, or this, that, or the other. And I may lose people. Who knows? I don't care. The people that are going to stick around to listen, those are the people I'm interested in talking to. So why is that important? Whenever it comes to ZBrush, right, or any program for that matter, in order you can skim around the surface. You can get away with little things here and there, but if you really want to take advantage of the program, you've got to speak its language. You've got to learn how to work inside of that program, and really, you know, basically think inside of ZBrush. And that's something that I've learned with working with horses, or anything uh, remotely related to that, is that I can't approach a horse and expect it to understand how I want it to behave. A horse is not going to think like a human being. And so I have to try my best to make sure that I'm thinking like that horse whenever I go up to approach it. Um, and horse it's an animal. It's got primal sorts of ways of being, and you have to understand those things. Otherwise, you're not going to get the right responses out of it. If you try and force your way into making things happen, uh, more than likely you're going to put yourself into a situation where you're going to get hurt, um, likely kicked, maybe killed. And so, trust me, after having my head nearly kicked off a few times, I learned very quickly, hey, this isn't something that I need to play around with. These are large animals, and they demand a certain amount of respect, right? And so that's the kind of approach that I have whenever it comes to working with artwork. I'm not going to get good by sitting around and going, man, I wish I just make it happen, right? It's just not going to happen. I mean, something will happen, but not what I'm probably not going to get where I want to. So that's kind of enough about that rant. But you know, you just got to commit yourself to this program, and figuring out ways to be resourceful and have patience whenever you're going through and working with this. And so one big thing that I've always tried to rely on is being resourceful whenever it comes to working with 3D programs. You don't have to always stick with ZBrush. You don't always have to stick with Maya, right? And so what I want to show you today is a little bit of workflow. I've talked about it a little bit in the past, but I've been working with it a little bit more here lately. Is incorporating another program like DAZ Studio into your workflow, right? And so, and I'll talk to you about why I've chosen to start working with this, and some of the benefits I see with it, right? So this horse here that I've been sculpting on, and I really just started working on it probably about an hour ago. Um, and I really haven't done any sculpture on it. Is something that I pulled over from Dad's studio, right? And I use this program to kind of give me a jumping off point that gives me some quality and some proficiency, right? And so let's hop over to Dad's. I'm gonna pull this program over so you can see it. There we go. All right. So Daz is a free program that you can download, and it generally comes with a couple of humanoid or human figures. They have a male and a female, but they also have other things that you can bring into there, if you know, for purchase, right? So this horse cost me about what, $30 or something like that, but it comes with a whole bunch of crap, right? And what's great about it is, as you can see, I'm throwing different poses on it. I can go through and move this thing around. That's not cool, but I can move its legs around. I can make all sorts of quick little changes. It's pre-rigged and everything like that. Now you can go through and you can make your own little figures and whatnot. And I had somebody asking me about this in the group. It seems like it's a bit of a pain in the butt to do so. So you know, if that's something that you're interested in, I am not the source of knowledge for using DAS to incorporate your own models, right? Um, Anything other than a static model, at least. So why is this useful and what do I use it for? As I mentioned, I'm going to be using it for kind of a quality control and then an efficiency sort of thing. So I like using this because it gives me, if I have something in my mind that I want to get out quickly, right? And that's usually what we run into whenever we hop into these programs. We have something in our head, right? And we want to get it out and we want to communicate whatever that vision is that we have, right? And so the faster we're able to do that, the less likely we are to give up on that thing, right? And so that's why I incorporate things like this because I know what my weaknesses are, right? Um, and so what I'll do with this is, if I were to start a new scene, which I'll do, and I just grabbed, say this horse, throw it in here. It's not going to have any textures or anything applied to it. I can start fresh, right? And so the cool thing with something like this is that I get a ton of stuff out of this. I have, it has deformers on it. I can make it an Arabian horse. Fun fact, if you don't know anything about horses, Arabian horses actually have, I believe it's one less vertebrae than most horses. Um, but it's got all these sliders. I can have a freaking donkey, a draft horse, um, a Mustang, which is just a wild horse, a little Shetland pony, and there's all sorts of stuff that you can do inside of here that affect this model, right? And so for me, this is great because from this I can have 1,000 horses if I want to. If I want to have like this, just a field of freaking war horses just running down the slope of a valley or something like that, then all I got to do is come through here and just take a horse, pose it around, bring it over to the ZBrush, and or whatever output that I want to put it in, and there we go. Okay. Now, as I mentioned, I did have to pay for this, right? The program itself is free, but and it does come with some free stuff, right? It comes with some free people and whatnot. But some of these models that you want to use in here are probably going to cost between I've seen between $10 and $50. It just depends on what all comes with it. But for me, if all I'm using this for is right now is for horses and people and things that I'm trying to sculpt, right? Because those are my interests. Um, Now I could go through and I could build a model every single time if I want to, but honestly, I'm not going to do that. If I have a way to make myself more efficient, then I'm going to go for it, right? Materials and everything like that don't really apply for what I'm going to do with it, but If you wanted to bring this down to, say, an illustration or something like that, that might be something that you might be interested in. So the benefit of working with this is that I can take this horse and then I can send it over to ZBrush, right? So I can apply a pose to it. Boom, he's asleep or just being lazy. Or I can apply whatever they have pre-made poses that are already here, and some of them have to be finagled a little bit, but I can get it into this area right here. And let's say I don't like this pose, I can rely on my animation knowledge and talk about making things, pushing a pose, making it a little bit more interesting. Maybe not if I want to stylize it or things like that, you know. And so I can get all that stuff going before I send it over to ZBrush. So I can get those problems solved before I even start putting clay to it, right? And that's what I want to be able to do. I want to get the majority of the silhouette and everything like that solved before I even hop into ZBrush, so that my time spent in there is very minimal. And this is all about proficiency. So that's kind of what I did here with this piece. Is that I got everything put into place. I pushed the pose, and now all I want to do is start going through, maybe adding some details to this horse. Give it that sculptor look. I'm gonna add some muscle definition and things like that to this character. But I'm also gonna give it a base and everything, so that whenever I go through and actually uh, dynamesh it and everything, get it ready to send off to go print so that it can be poured, um, everything looks great, right? Now, just pulling up my notes real quick. The only types of output that I'm going to be using for something like DAS is going to be, either something that's posed, and I'm going to be using for like a static asset, right? So if it were going for a video game or something like that, then I would definitely have no problem using DAS to come up with a pose or something, and put it into place and then create a static model. I wouldn't use personally that program for anything other than something that's going to be static. I know people use it for animation and things like that. That's not my area of expertise with that program. The other thing that I would use it for would be 2D illustration, right? And so the reason I use these programs and things like that, you know, some people get hung up on, well, you know, how you go about things. I try to think of things from a quality standpoint, and how much my clients are going to have to pay for something, right? And time is money, right? And particularly whenever you're working with format like, say, bronze, right? Bronze, it can, depending on who your vendor is, you may be paying more than $10 per pound for bronze. And whenever this stuff is poured at roughly about a quarter inch thick, bronze is a very heavy metal, right? And so if you go through and you're charging for time and the materials, uh, that affects your customer base, right? And for me personally, I would rather produce something that's quality and timely, and something that I don't have to spend forever working to change, right? So the benefit of working this way inside of ZBrush is that we all know that it's super easy to come through and just make changes as necessary, right? And so I can, if I was working with a client, and say they needed something to fit in a particular space, right? Because normally whenever somebody's going to spend the kind of money that they're going to on a large sculpture, they're going to spend money on this thing, and it's going to go into a specific area, right? And the benefit of working this way is that I can build that area or something like that in, say, a program like Maya, and have it to scale roughly, and then I can get this generalized and go through and do a decimation on it or something like that, and throw it into Maya and see how it fits and give them a visual, right? I can show my clients a visual of how this thing is going to look, right? And so that's the benefit of working this way, is that you're able to generate high level of quality. Quality is not only in the sculpt that you provide, but if you think of yourself as somebody who's providing a service to somebody, think about how that service is going whenever you're working back and forth between you and your client, right? And so these are all things that are kind of integrated, but nobody really seems to talk about. I see tons of discussions about how to sculpt a nose or an eye or anything like that, but very rarely does anyone talk about um, you know who you're doing this for, right? And so these are just some thoughts that I had going into this, and I just kind of wanted to talk about it for a minute. I'm going to sculpt for a little while, probably no longer than like 20 minutes live. This is something I'm going to be working out throughout the week. If you guys have questions, feel free to throw them up. Um, Otherwise, I'm just going to hang out and sculpt. So something I'm gonna try with this is I want to get like a grass texture on here, but I'm not sure that I want to spend a ton of time sculpting on it. Um, I want to see what I can do with surface noise to be able to get that job done, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm first going to duplicate this piece. I'm just going to solo it out, right? And I'm not too concerned with all this mess. I mean, I can smooth it out if I want to. And actually, that would probably help me a little bit because what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit it with a Z modeler or Z remesher, right? And so what I want to do here is, I'm afraid I might have some geometry crashing here, but we'll find out. So what I want to do is I want to bust this down as much as possible, right? So I'm going to go, I don't feel like I need any more than 500 polys, right? So I'm just going to hit it with a Z remesher, see what happens. I'm not changing much of anything else over here. And we'll see what it does with the surface. And that's not too bad. It's actually not too bad at all. And, you know, I don't need this to be perfect because all I'm trying to do is just get something going, particularly with UVs. Okay? And so what I want to do is I want to get this thing separated out real quick. So what I'm going to do is grab my Z modeler and I want to apply a polygroup to a flat island, right? And what this is going to allow me to do is it's going to allow me to split this out, right? Now, I can delete this piece or I can just leave it as it is. Right now, I'm just going to leave it as it is. Later on down the line, yeah, I can go through and change things up. But what I really want to do is I want to get some UVs on this so I can use it. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to first of all I'm going to save this so I don't lose anything in case ZBrush crashes. Because if you've been working with this program for any amount of time, you'll understand that if it's going to crash, it's usually going to have something to do with any sort of algorithm that you run. That's not always the case because sometimes ZBrush is just like, hey, I'm just going to crash. So enter at your own peril, right? So what I want to do with this UV master, I've pulled up the Z plugin and I've just dropped it over here. I'm not too concerned about symmetry, but I am concerned about polygroups. Also, I want to work on a clone. And I don't know what happened there. Apparently, that was weird. Okay. Some strange things happen sometimes. What it did is it did make a clone, but it just backed up to another project for whatever reason. Anyway, so what I want to do with this is I want to use polygroups and I just want to do a quick unwrap. So there we go. Unwrap. Then I'm just going to hit check seams, right? And you'll see that the border is right there. And I'm just going to do a quick flatten and there we go. That's perfect. Now, what I want to do before I get too much farther is that I don't care so much about the bottom side, right? And so I can make some changes here real quick, and this works for any UVs that you make, right? So this stuff here on the bottom, I don't care about that. If I were worried about texture space, right, I would just make that as small as possible, or just get rid of it altogether, right? But what I want to do is just try to maximize this space as much as possible without crossing over the borders. I can even rotate it so I can push those boundaries. And that's going to be fine for what we need, okay? So there's that. Now, I'm going to do an unflatten. I'm going to copy these UVs. Then I'm going to go back over to my original piece, and then I'm going to paste those UVs, right? And just to make doubly sure that they applied, the next thing I'm going to do is come down to UV map under my subtool. And as long as this is available, I have UV. So if I hit morph UV, there we go, we have UVs. All right. Now, what are we going to use this for? What I want to do is use my UVs to create surface noise, right? But right now, it's not going to really do anything because I don't have any subdivisions. So I'm just going to subdivide up a few times. Right now we're at 21,000. I want to get a pretty significant amount of geometry, understanding that every time I subdivide, it multiplies my polygons by 4. So I want to be, I don't necessarily think I need a million polys, but I think 500,000 is probably good. Okay. At least to sort out what I want to do with this noise, right? The other thing I want to do is I want to figure out what sort of alphas I have, right? So if I want to go for something that's kind of grassy, that might be okay. You might want to look for something that looks like grass a little bit more. Now I could probably use this, but it's not. I don't believe it's tiled, right? So it really just depends on where you want things to go. So let's see. I mean, that's okay. Let's see what sort of textures we have. Looks like grass or rock or something like that. And these are all textures that are in ZBrush naturally, right? So you can use this. And of course, you can bring your own in as well. But I'm going to see what we can get away with just using ZBrush. Just looking for something. Is that weed? Let's see. We'll use this, okay? So let's see. This should get added to. Where's my textures? Texture map. There we go. All right. So what I want to do with this is I need to do a few things with this. If I'm going to apply it as an alpha, okay, I need to get it to a black and white image, okay? So what I'm going to do with this before I go too much further is I'm actually going to send this out to Photoshop, and luckily enough I do have Photoshop up, so I'm going to go export, and I'm going to go image grass, and we'll pull it up in Photoshop over here. Now, granted, it's not completely tiled. I could go through and tile it up if I want to, but really all I'm going to do is go hue and saturation. I'm going to just drop the saturation altogether. I want a black and white image. Okay, and then now this is going to be some bang up work. It's not going to be perfect. And I'm going to mess around with the levels just to kind of push this a bit, right? Now, what I'm doing with this is I'm trying to get myself some quick texture. Now, I say quick, but I'm spending time messing around with Photoshop. But what I'm trying to do is get some quick texture, so that way I can go back and just touch it up a little bit, right? Um, Now, obviously, if you want something tileable, you're going to have to go with a perfect square, so 1024, 2048, or whatever you're going to use. But I'm just going to say, okay, this is good. So I'm going to save this as a just as a BMP. Sure, that's fine. All right. So what I want to do now is I'm going to go to my surface. I'm going to go noise, and I want to situate this so that I'm looking at it from the top down. And then I'm going to go alpha. I'm going to use this grass. Okay. Now right now you're not going to see anything. So don't really have anything applied to it. But if I bring up the strength, you'll start seeing some stuff, and you can see where those borders are, right? And that's fine. I don't care about that. I can go through and change it. I can change the scale of this, right? And I can do strength either way. It goes positive or negative. Just depends on which way that you want it to work. Now, the next thing I need to do is right now it's just being cast across. It's just being projected, right? And so if I move around this object, you can see that it's being projected past the sides. If I want to change that, I need to use my UVs, which is why I grabbed the UVs in the first place. So now it's not going to be projecting past there, it's actually going to wrap around, which is really what I want, okay? And so by using that, now I have, you can see this tile, that's fine. Um, how much noise do I want? Say I want zero noise. Or maybe bring the scale up. That's good. Okay. Now, if I wanted to, I could have put some masks on here. Let's say I wanted to have some patches that had no grass. That's fine. I can go through and just smooth that out and apply a different thing to it. Now I can adjust this focal shift. Okay. So let's say I wanted just some rocky terrain. Then I can do that. And let's see, if I want to, I can apply an offset. Now what this will do is it will just kind of generate some patchiness. And this is cool because what I can do with this is then I can take this here and generate a completely separate model that's only grass, and I can put it on top of the smoothed area or a rocky area, right? I'm not going to go with that. I don't need an offset. So I'm just going to go with this as it is. So I'm going to say, okay, boom. And so now this is going to be applied, but right now it's still only an image, right? If I want this to be applied as sculptable data, then what I need to do is go apply to mesh, okay? So that's what I'm going to do. I'm satisfied with this. It's going to go through, update things, and you can see now that we have this pretty gnarly surface. Right now, all I really wanted to do was get some noise. Okay. And the beauty of this is that now I can go back and since I did duplicate this, now I can I can just push this surface in if I want to. Um, so let's say this area, I want to have some rock showing through. Uh, you know, I don't know, or just some dirt or something. I can go through and apply a different noise to that. And in the end, all I'm going to be doing with this is dynameshing it all together before I go through and send it off to print. So and that's that just gets me that much farther down the road. It's not complete, it's not perfect, but it's something that's usable, right? So let's say I wanted to go back through with say my Damien standard, and now I'm at a higher subdivision level, and I can come back over the surface, start cutting things down. And if I wanted to, I could go back and apply another noise modifier to it, and then just keep on going and keep on going and keep on going. And really, it just depends on what the output is, how you want it to look. Because this is going to be sculpted, or it's going to be something that I'm going to print out later on. Um, you know, it really depends on how I want to represent this. I can leave it stylized, or I can have it be something completely different. So, say for this piece, let's say on this one, I want to apply just a surface noise. I'm going to go noise, and this time I'm going to leave the projection on. Let's use an alpha. Maybe not even an alpha. Let's say I want to just do alpha, the strength of the noise, change the noise scale. And you can see this is all procedural, right? I can also use this graph over here, which will help me to control things. I can change the focal shift. I can even adjust the angle, the offset. So let's say I want the Y offset to be pretty significant, or I want it to be 0. So these are all little things here inside of ZBrush that you can use to your advantage. Notice I haven't done a whole lot of sculpting, right? So I'm going to go OK. Now that's applied to the surface underneath, and now I'm going to apply it to the mesh. Okay. So now I have that coming through, and on this one, then I can come back and start yanking some of the surface around, and just for the hell of it, what I want to do is I'm going to change the color of this so I can see it, right? So I'm going to go MRGB, and I'm actually going to change the material to say just a basic material. And I'm going to go fill, and then I can continue working on these others as I see fit. So what I can do with this now, I've got this noise going on. I'm only at 108,000 polys, so if I subdivide, then I can come through with, say, let's see, I could use a clay buildup with, say, something craggy like this. You know, and just break things up. Now you definitely want to change things around. And just move all over the surface. But all I'm really trying to do is just make some noise. So it really all depends on your personal preference of things. You know, I don't know if this has been helpful or not, but these are some things that I do to try and speed things up for myself, so that I can spend more energy creating the thing that I want versus fighting with the program to be able to create a piece of work, right? So that's pretty much all I got for today. I'm gonna continue working on this offline, but just some food for thought. If you guys have any questions about this, just feel free to hit me up on the ZFever group. I get a lot of people asking me for my email address and everything through YouTube. I'm not going to give up my personal email information online, just because the way the world is these days. It's not that I don't trust you guys. It's just people take liberties through email and everything, and I definitely don't want any viruses on my computer. So thanks again for watching. Feel free to ask any questions. Hope you guys are having a wonderful Sunday and happy ZBrushing. Take care, guys.